Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going through the Blizzard Blue patch notes and then specifically the hot fixes for January 9th. We're going to be talking about the different nerfs and buffs for every one of the classes. Before we do that though, guys, do me a favor, help me out. I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers, so if you could hit that sub button, turn the alerts on, and drop a comment on this video. Let me know what you think about these new nerfs and buffs. It means the world to me. So starting off the bat, we're going to be talking about the Demon Hunter. With weekly restarts, the hunt damage over time effect no longer deals an additional tick on application. Damage dealt over the tutorial duration remains unchanged. We'll see how that plays. I play a Demon Hunter. I have a Demon Hunter specifically, but I use the hunt, so I'll definitely be testing that out today to see what that looks like. For Vengeance, with the weekly restarts, thick skin armor bonus has been increased to 130%. It was 100%. Calcified skin initial damage reduction value increased to 12%, was 10%. Painbringer duration is increased to 6 seconds, was 5 seconds. So all around buffs for the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Going into Druid, it's going to be the Feral Druid, got some updates. All ability damage dealt is increased by 3%, so they just got a flat 3% increase. The Evoker Devastation fire breath damage is increased by 10% for Devastation specialization only. It does not apply to PvP combat though. Lay Waste increases deep breath damage by 15 and 30%, and it was 10 and 20%. Eternity Surge damage increased by 10%. Firestorm damage increased by 20%. Eye of Infinity generates 2 essence on critical strike. It just was 1 essence prior. Bell Weaver's Dominance increases critical strike damage to 230%, and it was 220%. Iridescence damage bonus is increased by 20%, was 15%. So the Devastation Evoker got some love all the way across the board. We're going to jump into the Hunter, specifically the Survival class. Again, all of these are through the weekly, they start on the weekly reset, so they're starting today. All ability damage and pet damage increased by 2%. Butchery and Carve damage increased by 10%. Fury the Eagle damage increased by 10%. Wildfire Bomb damage increased by 15%. So if you like throwing those bombs, they buffed them up for you. And then going into Mage, Mage got some love for Fire and Frost. So starting with Fire, Flame Strike damage increased by 15%. Living Bomb damage increased by 25%. For Frost, the Frostbolt damage is increased by 20%. Ray of Frost damage increased by 40%. Glacial Spike damage increased by 10%. Moving into the Monk, starting with the Brewmaster, efficacy of Stagger against magical damage increased by 45%, was 35%. Cooldown of Celestial Brew is reduced by 45 seconds, and it was 60 seconds. That's a nice cooldown. Moving into the Mistweaver, all healing increased by 5%. Vivify healing increased by additional 5%. Blackout kick damage increased by 6%. Rising Sun kick damage increased by 8%. Tiger Palm damage increased by 15%. Spinning Crane kick damage increased by 5%. Awakened Feline now transfers 70% of Spinning Crane kicks damage into healing. It was 60%. Moving along into Paladin, specifically Retribution, Crusader Strike damage was increased by 40%. Blade of Justice damage increased by 25%. 40%, boys, on that Crusader Strike. Woo! Final Reckoning increased by 15%. Shield of Vengeance cooldown is reduced to 90 seconds. It was 120 seconds. Some developer notes on Ret Pally. Some of Retribution's main rotational buttons do not feel as good to press as we'd like, so we are making some changes to help improve these abilities. Additionally, their survivability isn't where we would like, so we're making some more improvements to their defensive kit as well. We are looking at Retribution as a whole, and we'll have more to share in the future. So if you're a Ret main, get ready for some more love, because they're staring at you guys really hard right now. We're going to move into the Priest, specifically Holy. All healing done by 3%. Man, you Holy Priests, I hope you guys are feeling that love. I mean, 3% doesn't sound like that much, but I mean, considering it's across all of it, maybe it's going to be a good improvement for you. We're going to move into Shadow Priest. Focused Will provides 10% damage reduction for Shadow, down from 15%. So a little loss of love there. Mind Blast damage increased to 15%, Shadow only. Mind Flay damage increased by 15%. This includes Mind Flay Insanity, but not the proc of Idol of Cthulhu. Mind Spike damage increased by 15%. Void Torrent damage increased by 15%. Devouring Plague damage increased by 15%. The Shadow Priest also got some developer notes as well. These changes are aimed to improve Shadow's single target DPS. The change to focused will is targeted change for PvP to reduce Shadow's survivability. Moving into the Rogue Outlaw. Reduce precise cuts, which is a talent, bonus to Blade Fury damage per missing target below its maximum to 2%. It was 3%. We do have some developer notes on the Rogue Outlaw. As we monitor the developing M+ meta and related data, we recognize the Outlaw is overperforming. We expect this change will reduce Outlaw's damage output in encounters that target count above 1 but below 8, as their damage is currently more consistent than we intend for dungeons and encounters that frequently present those circumstances. Let's move into the Warlock. They fixed an issue with demon armor from the conflict and strife essence presented outside of the Battle of Azeroth zones. Okay, I didn't even know that was a thing, but hey, thanks guys. So let's start with Affliction. Agony damage is increased by 5%. Corruption damage increased by 5%. Drain Soul damage increased by 10%. Pandemic Invocation damage increased by 20%. Seed of Corruption damage increased by 5%. Shadow Bolt damage increased by 10%. Siphon of Life damage increased by 10%. Unstable Affliction backlash damage is no longer increased from increased damage dealt modifiers or effects that increase unstable Affliction damage. Sounds like they got a whole lot of improvements and not a lot of backlash for it, so I hope you're enjoying those Affliction Warlocks out there. Destruction, we're going to talk about Destruction now. Channel Demon Fire damage is increased by 10%. Rain of Fire damage is increased by 15%. Soul Fire damage increased by 20%. Infernal and Blasphemy Immolation damage increased by 10%. Conflagrate damage increased by 10%, but that does not apply to PvP. Immolate damage increased by 10%. Does not apply to PvP. And Incinerate damage increased to 15%. Does not apply to PvP. That's going to do it for the classes in PvE. We're going to look at the updates to Dungeons and Raids. The Nokud Offensive with the boss Granith fixed an issue where multiple players could interact with the ballista at the same time, each fire an arrow. For Tira and Maruk, fixed an issue where Blessing of Protection allowed players to be immune to the effects of Tira's Gale Arrow. Ruby Life Pools, Meladrusa's Chillworn, reduced damage of triggering a Hail Bomb by 40%. So they've reduced the Hail Bomb by 40%. Reduced party-wide AoE damage on initial cast of Hail Bombs by 66%. The developer's notes, the initial on-cast hit from Hail Bombs was never intended to be a large source of damage, and when scaled up with Mythic Plus, it is contributing more damage to the fight than we'd like, so we're reining it in for healers for more breathing room to recover from Meladrusa's other abilities. Very nice. Kokia Blazehoof. Reduced period damage of Searing Wounds by 25% and reduced damage of Scorched Earth by 25%. That's huge. I can actually affirm with you guys right now that this last week, trying to run Ruby was insane with a pug group, because just the mechanics are simple, but if everybody's not on the same page, those damaging abilities, the Searing Wounds and the Scorched Earth, they were bopping. So, you know, this is going to be fun. Alcathar Academy fixed an issue where some of the enemies near Veximus did not provide enemy forces credit and adjust enemy forces requirements accordingly. This developer's notes on that. This will make enemies in the dungeon appear to grant slightly less enemy forces credit, but defeating the enemies affected by this change was required to engage Veximus. So there shouldn't be any real gameplay impact. Nice. Okay. Vault of Incarnates, Razageth. Reduce the push effect of Hurricane Wing on Mythic difficulty. That is the only thing with the raid. And finally, for wrap up, we're going to go through the PvP stuff really quick so you guys can be informed. The classes, starting with Demon Hunter, Soul Rending Leech reduced by 40% in PvP combat. Specifically, Havoc Glimpse, which is a PvP talent, damage has been reduced by 35%. It was 75%. Essence Break damage bonus for Chaos Strike and Blade Dance reduced by 37.5% in PvP combat. Soul Rend damage has been reduced by 16.7% in PvP combat. So if you're a Demon Hunter fan in the PvP scene, you just got gutted. Moving to Evoker Preservation, Energy Loop's mana regeneration reduced by 25% in PvP combat. Moving into Mage, specifically Arcane, the Siphon Storm's effectiveness has been reduced by 50% in PvP combat. For Frost, Reduced glacial spikes damage increased from mastery icicles by 25%. This will be reflected in the tooltip in a later patch. For Monk, blackout kick damage increased by 30% in PvP combat, it was 15%. And Tiger Palm's damage increased by 30%. In PvP combat, it was 15%. For Mistweaver, Rising Sun Kick now deals 12.5 additional damage in PvP, it was 25%. For Windwalker, Thunder Fist damage reduced by 40% in PvP combat. Skyreach increases critical strike chance by 30% in PvP combat, it was 50%. And then Fist of Fury damage increased by 15% in PvP combat. Moving over to Priest, Flash Heal Healing is increased by 30% in PvP combat, it was 20%, specifically targeting Holy. Heal Healing is increased by 35% in PvP combat, it was 25%. Holy Word, Serenity Healing is increased by 15% in PvP combat. Moving into Shadow Priest, Shadow Word, death damage reduced by 30% in PvP combat for Shadow, and it was only 20 prior. Mind Blast damage reduced by 25% in PvP combat for Shadow only. Mind Spike damage reduced by 25% in PvP combat. Devouring Blade damage reduced by 25% in PvP combat. Vampiric Touch reduced by 5% in PvP combat, was increased to 10%. A trigger rate of Shadowy Insight has been reduced by 25% in PvP combat, as well as the Surge of Darkness. Those have both been reduced to 25%. Moving on to Rogue, specifically Assassination. Improved Garrett damage bonus reduced by 40% in PvP combat. That was a sentence to say. Iron Wire damage reduction debuff now has a PvP duration of 4 seconds. It was 8 seconds. Warlock Demonology. Demonic Strength unleashes a Fellstorm that deals 150% increased damage in PvP combat, down from 400%. Oof. Demon Fire damage was increased by 75% in PvP combat. Dread Bite damage was increased by 10% in PvP combat. Moving on to Warrior, Defense Stance now reduces down damage done by 15%. It was 20% in PvP combat. And that's going to wrap up today's video with the updates. They are effective today. I hope you guys enjoy, test your tunes, see what they feel like. Do me a favor and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about these nerfs and buffs. If you've already tested them out, if you're already in the game right now and then you catch this video later, let me know what you think. I appreciate it. Again, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, could really use your help. Hit the sub button, turn the alerts on. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day. Peace.